The galaxy did not lack for great empires. The archives of countless civilizations held the records of star nations that rose from a single homeworld, spilled into the void, and expanded until they collided with rivals who thought themselves eternal. Each empire boasted of endurance, culture, or military strength, but none of them carried the same reputation as the newest arrival to the interstellar stage. Humanity. They had been latecomers, stepping out of their blue planet long after most powers had already mapped and divided the stars. Yet in only a handful of centuries, they had clawed their way from obscurity into a position no one could ignore. They had fought wars no one else would dare fight, colonized worlds dismissed as death traps, and built alliances even among species long thought unapproachable. Most dangerous of all, they carried with them something older than any fleet or weapon, an instinctual defiance, a refusal to yield even in the face of overwhelming odds. It was into this landscape that one figure had risen above all others. She was not simply another human officer or diplomat. She was a living symbol of what her kind represented. Known across the galaxy as General Atria Valen, she was the architect of victories that had broken sieges, routed enemies, and forced even the most arrogant admirals of other species to acknowledge human command. Tall, sharp-eyed, and seemingly carved from iron, she had the aura of inevitability in battle. Her soldiers swore by her, her allies respected her, and even her enemies studied her campaigns in whispers, trying to find weaknesses that never seemed to exist. The galaxy had learned to tread carefully around her, yet what the galaxy did not understand, what it could not yet fathom, was that even the coldest human steel hid a heart that could love with terrifying intensity. Atria's mate was no soldier. He was a man of words and ideas rather than weapons. Kale belonged to the diplomatic corps, specializing in the delicate task of negotiating between species whose histories were painted in blood. He had been sent to alien worlds to prevent wars before they started, to turn old hatreds into uneasy truces, and to remind both human and non-human that peace was worth more than conquest. Where Atria projected strength, Kale offered calm. Where she was feared, he was trusted. Together, they formed a bond that puzzled outsiders. Many alien cultures could not comprehend why someone as formidable as a general would choose a partner so far removed from the battlefield. To them, it seemed weakness, a contradiction. Yet to those who understood humanity, the answer was simple. Humans fought hardest not for conquest or pride, but for those they loved. The galaxy had seen Atria command armies with unwavering focus, but had never seen what she would become if someone dared to touch what was hers. That knowledge remained locked, waiting, until the day a foolish empire decided to test it. The Zarlek Dominion had always been ambitious. Spread across a cluster of mineral-rich worlds, they built fleets with impressive speed, but lacked the discipline to wield them effectively. Their rulers, arrogant in their isolation, believed themselves untouchable. They resented humanity's swift rise and influence, and whispered that humans were nothing more than overpraised predators, dangerous in the wild, but incapable of standing against a united front. To them, Atria's fame was not a sign of unmatched brilliance, but proof of how the galaxy exaggerated human reputation. When they discovered that the general's mate was traveling on a diplomatic mission through their sector, temptation bloomed in the minds of their leaders. What better way to humiliate humanity than a strike at the heart of its most celebrated warrior? Surely if they proved she could be wounded, the legend of human invincibility would shatter. The mission was supposed to be simple. Kale had been invited under the guise of negotiation, with assurances of safety guaranteed by Zarlek envoys. He walked into their halls carrying the quiet confidence of a man who had resolved conflict before, believing that words could still bend the course of history. But the Dominion had prepared a trap, not a treaty. They staged an accident, a manufactured malfunction, in the security drones guarding the chamber. When the machines erupted in a sudden barrage of plasma fire, chaos filled the air. Zarlek guards pretended shock, feigned attempt to control, but their hesitation revealed the truth. Kale was struck, his body torn by energy burns before he could even cry out for help. His human age dragged him from the carnage, bleeding, barely alive. The Zarlek authorities issued apologies laced with insincerity. Regrettable, they said, a technical fault, most unfortunate. Behind closed doors they congratulated themselves. To them, the deed was done. Humanity's symbol had been humiliated. Surely the general would be restrained by politics and treaties. Surely she would not risk full war for the life of one man. They did not understand. Not yet. The news traveled fast. Across human space. Transmissions lit up with the report. General Valen's mate had been attacked on Zarlek soil. The official explanation of malfunction was received with scorn, dissected by human analysts who saw the deliberate pattern. Within hours, whispers began. The general, they said, would not let this pass. Those who had served under her spoke of her loyalty to her soldiers, her refusal to abandon even a single comrade. If she held such devotion to those who followed her orders, how much more terrifying would her resolve be for the man she loved? Some feared what was coming. Others welcomed it, but all agreed on one thing. A line had been crossed. Atria herself did not weep before the cameras. She did not storm into the halls of the Galactic Council demanding vengeance. When she arrived at the medical station where Kale's broken body lay in stasis, she stood in silence, her hand pressed to the glass of the chamber. Witnesses described her expression as unreadable, as though she had locked her grief in an iron vault. But those who had served under her recognized the signs. They had seen that mask before, in the quiet moments before she launched campaigns that shattered enemy armadas. Her silence was not emptiness. It was the stillness of a blade drawn, but not yet swung. Among alien powers, the reaction was mixed. Some dismissed the incident as regrettable but insignificant. Others warned that the Dominion had gone too far. But the prevailing sentiment was arrogance. Many believed the humans would posture, perhaps impose sanctions or cut diplomatic ties, but they would not dare escalate. To strike a sovereign world for the injury of one man would be madness. Surely even humans had limits. Surely even Atria Valen could be contained by reason. They had not studied human history closely enough. They had not read the records of Earth's past, where empires had been burned for less, where wars had ignited not over resources but over insults, betrayals, and the spilling of blood that should never have been touched. They did not know the instinct that ran deeper than strategy, the primal fury that transformed grief into action. Humanity did not weigh costs and gain when someone they loved was harmed. They did not measure retribution in treaties and reparations. They answered with fire, silence. See, the silence after the attack did not last. Human space shifted as though a vast beast had stirred from slumber. What had seemed at first like scattered adjustments became an undeniable pattern. Shipping lanes cleared with unnatural speed. Civilian vessels were recalled. Colonies fortified, and supply convoys began moving in numbers that could not be explained by routine commerce. Where other species would require years of preparation to mobilize a fleet, humans moved as if they had rehearsed this moment for generations. They had lived with the expectation that one day, inevitably, someone would strike at the heart of what they held dear. Now that it had happened, their response was not debate but motion. The general's command staff watched with the quiet dread of those who knew precisely what they were witnessing. Her orders carried no rhetoric. She issued no threats, no demands for negotiation. She simply began to move her pieces across the galactic board with a precision that chilled even her closest allies. Patrol fleets vanished from peripheral sectors and reappeared in staging grounds near Zarlek space. Reserve squadrons long thought ceremonial were suddenly reinforced with cutting-edge weaponry. Shipyards that had been producing explorers and transports overnight shifted to war output. Every system, every orbital dock, every civilian authority responded without hesitation, as though bound by an unspoken agreement that this act of violence had erased all restraint. The alien observers who reported these movements to their governments struggled to describe what they saw. The humans did not posture, did not leak threats into galactic channels the way most species did when preparing for war. They fell silent, and silence was far worse. Silence meant intent. Silence meant the humans no longer felt the need to explain themselves. Their actions would speak, and those actions were aligning into one undeniable trajectory. Punishment. Atria herself remained out of sight. While rumors spread to the Galactic Council chambers of her mate's condition, stabilized by hovering between life and death, she appeared only in encrypted briefings with her officers. There she spoke with the same clipped precision that had carried her through a dozen wars. But there was a difference this time. Her past campaigns had been fought for duty, for alliance, for survival. This campaign, though meticulously calculated, carried the weight of something deeper. Every officer in that chamber could feel it. They knew that the Zarlek Dominion had not only drawn humanity's attention, they had drawn Atria's personal wrath, and she was channeling it with terrifying clarity. The first wave of human action was not bombardment. It was strangulation. The Dominion's border trade routes, which kept their core system supplied with food, energy, and rare materials, began to collapse under the pressure of targeted raids. Merchant ships vanished without distress calls. Outposts reported mysterious disruptions, communications blackouts, or sabotage from within. The Dominion accused pirates, but the precision was too exact to be random. Every disruption cut deeper into the infrastructure that sustained them, leaving their fleets fueled but their civilians restless. Their admirals, arrogant but not blind, began to sense that an invisible net was closing. What made it worse was the psychology behind it. The humans did not claim responsibility. They left the Dominion guessing, stewing in uncertainty, knowing but unable to prove. It was deliberate. Atria was not merely dismantling their strength. She was unraveling their confidence. Each missing shipment, each silenced colony, was a whisper in the ears of their people. Your leaders cannot protect you. That whisper grew louder with each passing week, until unrest began to ripple even through their capital world. Still, the Dominion rulers clung to their arrogance. They summoned their generals, ordered more ships to the front, and proclaimed that humanity would not dare cross into their territory with open force. In their minds, the humans were masters of intimidation, but not prepared for true war against an empire their size. They believed numbers would shield them, that their fleets, though clumsy, could overwhelm through sheer mass. What they failed to grasp was that numbers meant little against a species that had never once fought by the book. Humans did not match strength with strength. They used what their enemies gave them, twisted it, and turned it into the instrument of that enemy's destruction. The moment came when the first human fleet finally revealed itself. At the edge of Zarlek space, near a mining colony the Dominion believed secure, sensors lit up with signatures of warships dropping from faster-than-light travel. Not hundreds, not the overwhelming swarm the Dominion had anticipated, but a lean formation of cruisers and carriers, each one bristling with weaponry adapted for dozens of possible scenarios. The Dominion scrambled defenders, confident their larger force could crush the intruders. Yet when the battle began, they discovered what the rest of the galaxy had always whispered. Humans did not fight like anyone else. The Dominion ships advanced in rigid formation, their strategy predictable, their firepower impressive but clumsy. The humans responded not with static lines, but with chaos, shifting vectors, improvising maneuvers mid-battle, using their own ships as bait to lure enemies into crossfire. Every weapon seemed to serve multiple purposes. Missiles split into swarms. Drones became decoys. Carriers launched fighters that behaved more like swarms of predators than machines. Within minutes, the Dominion's confidence crumbled. Their larger fleet found itself corralled, cut apart, and rendered helpless. When the last of their ships limped back to base, the mining colony they had sworn to protect was already in human hands. Not occupied, emptied, every valuable resource stripped away, every databank erased, every system set ablaze. The humans did not conquer. They erased. The galaxy watched with growing dread. Other empires had assumed humanity would strike, but none had expected the cold precision with which they did it. This was not vengeance taken in blind fury. This was a campaign designed to dismantle an empire piece by piece, to teach a lesson that would echo for centuries. Reports flowed into the council chambers, Zarlek fleets vanishing, colonies destabilized, infrastructure disintegrating. Each new report added weight to the same conclusion. General Valen was orchestrating the systematic unmaking of a star nation. The Dominion attempted diplomacy, but every envoy they sent was met with silence. Their desperate communiques were intercepted but never answered. Humanity did not seek reparations. Humanity did not seek apology. They sought only one thing: consequence. When their envoys begged the Council for intervention, other powers recoiled. None were willing to stand between humans and their wrath. They had seen too clearly what was unfolding. To protect the Dominion now would be to draw the same fire upon themselves, and no empire had the stomach for that risk. The Zarlek Dominion had believed arrogance could shield them. They had assumed that numbers, mass, and bluster could withstand the storm they had unleashed. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the evidence was undeniable. Their fleets were broken, their colonies were bleeding, their supply chains were strangled, and their citizens were beginning to riot. For all their attempt at bravado, the Dominion was no longer an empire. It was prey. Human fleets encircled their core worlds like wolves around a wounded beast. Every time the Dominion attempted to regroup, human intelligence was already waiting. No matter how carefully they moved, their strategies collapsed before they could unfold. Sabotage cut power from defense grids. Strikes annihilated fleets before they left dock, and whispers of rebellion spread to the lower ranks of their command. Entire legions deserted rather than face the humans in battle again. The Dominion's rulers, once loud with their taunts, now hid behind fortress walls, clinging to the illusion of control. They sent desperate pleas to the Galactic Council, begging for intervention. The Council answered with silence. No one would step between humanity and the vengeance it had claimed. Atria Valen had never moved faster, nor with greater clarity. Her campaign was not conquest. It was retribution delivered with surgical efficiency. She did not waste time with sieges or occupations. Every order she gave was aimed at dismantling the Dominion's capacity to resist. Where she struck, she left ruins. Where she passed, the infrastructure of an empire withered. Her fleets did not linger. They moved like blades slicing arteries, letting the Dominion bleed out from within. And behind every strike was the unspoken truth. This was not about territory or spoils. This was about the mate who lay broken in a medical chamber, and the price that would be paid for daring to harm him. When the Dominion's high command gathered for what they declared would be their final defense, they believed that massing the remnants of their fleets around their capital world would deter humanity from pressing further. They positioned dreadnoughts in orbit, activated every planetary defense battery, and summoned soldiers from every surviving colony. They told their people that this was a moment of defiance, the proof that Zarlek's strength could not be extinguished. But deep down, they knew it was not strength they were showing. It was desperation. Humanity arrived not with overwhelming numbers, but with inevitability. The fleet that emerged from faster-than-light travel above the Dominion's capital was smaller than what observers expected, but its presence radiated precision and intent. Every vessel gleamed with the efficiency of a war machine that had fought across death worlds and void alike. At its heart stood the flagship, the General's command vessel, a silhouette that carried more weight than any dreadnought. The Dominion broadcast demands, threats, and pleas, but no answer came. The humans advanced in silence. The battle that followed was less a contest and more a revelation. The Dominion unleashed everything at once. Fleets, planetary cannons, orbital defenses. The void lit with fire as energy lanced and missiles streaked. But the humans moved as though they had choreographed the engagement long before it began. Their ships slipped through barges with inhuman precision, counterstrikes carving holes in the Dominion lines. Dreadnoughts crumbled under concentrated fire. Defense stations went dark in coordinated strikes, and entire squadrons vanished in waves of chaos unleashed by human ingenuity. No single maneuver was predictable, no formation static. The Dominion fought with rigidity and numbers. The humans fought with adaptability, creativity, and a willingness to turn anything into a weapon. Within hours, the massive defense fleet that was meant to safeguard their capital had become a graveyard of wreckage burning in orbit. But the humans did not stop there. Where most species would have paused, demanded surrender, or claimed victory, Atria pushed forward with the second phase of her plan. The Dominion's capital world, the seat of their rulers, loomed below. Its skies glowed with defense shields, its surface bristled with fortresses, its people crowded in fear. The humans had the power to conquer, but they chose a different path. Orbital bombardment began with precision strikes, targeting not civilians but infrastructure, tearing apart power grids, communication hubs, military complexes. The shields faltered, flickered, and finally failed. And then, when nothing remained to stop them, the bombardment widened. The sky itself ignited. Firestorms swept across continents as orbital strikes rained down with merciless rhythm. Oceans boiled where impact struck, clouds turned to ash, and cities collapsed under the fury from above. The Dominion had mocked humanity as overpraised predators. Now they watched their world burn in a storm unleashed not by predators, but by a species whose loyalty was fiercer than any empire had ever conceived. Atria gave no speeches, issued no ultimatums. She simply executed the sentence, and the sentence was fire. Across the galaxy, observers received the transmissions. They saw the burning of a world not through propaganda, but through raw, unfiltered feeds captured by terrified witnesses. They saw the silence of the human fleet as it unleashed annihilation without hesitation, without boasting, without mercy. And as they watched, a chilling understanding spread. This was what it meant to harm what a human loved. The Dominion collapsed in a single night. Its rulers were obliterated in their palaces, its fleets shattered, its infrastructure reduced to cinders. Those who survived scattered into the void, refugees carrying nothing but the memory of fire. The Dominion was no longer an empire. It was a warning carved into history. Humanity did not conquer their worlds, did not enslave their people. They simply destroyed the heart of the power that had dared to strike at them and left the ruins behind as a message. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, but no one dared to censure humanity. Instead, they debated in hushed tones how to ensure no one ever repeated the Dominion's mistake. Resolutions were passed quietly. Laws rewritten to protect human envoys. Agreements signed that ensured human mates, families, and civilians were treated with a reverence usually reserved for sovereign leaders. Empires that had once scoffed at human sentimentality now trembled at the thought of provoking it. They whispered the new law of the stars, never wound what a human holds dear. Among humanity, there was no celebration. Soldiers returned to their stations with solemn pride, knowing they had done what had to be done. Civilians watched the reports with mixed awe and dread, reminded once more of the terrible duality of their kind. The capacity to build peace and the equal capacity to deliver annihilation when peace was betrayed. At the center of it all, Atria Valen returned to the chamber where her mate still lay in stasis. She did not speak of victory or vengeance. She simply stood beside him, her hand resting against the glass as it had before. To her, the campaign had not been about conquest. It had been about him, and about the message carved into the ruins of a world. That humanity's love was both its greatest strength and its most terrifying weapon. The flames that consumed the Zyrex homeworld did not burn out quickly. For days, their cities collapsed under the relentless bombardment of orbital strikes. Their oceans boiled as carriers released payloads meant not just for tactical victory, but for irreversible annihilation. The human general had made her vow clear. No Zyrex would ever again threaten her or those she held dear. But destruction was not the end. It was only the beginning of what humanity's retribution looked like when their patience ran dry. The Zyrex command structure dissolved almost instantly after the planetary bombardment. Their military hierarchy, once boasting its proud traditions of conquest and dominance, now stood shattered like broken glass. Their fleets no longer received coordinated orders. Fragments of squadrons drifted in confusion, unsure whether to regroup or flee, but the humans never gave them the chance. Every fragment was hunted, dismantled, and burned. Each vessel carried survivors who begged for mercy, yet the humans offered only silence and fire. The Galactic Council had never seen such focused wrath. Empires had fought before. Species had been eradicated in the name of conquest, but never with this precision, never with this personal intensity. This was not conquest, nor strategic war. This was vengeance wrapped in discipline. Fury channeled through military exactitude. Humanity was not just destroying an enemy. They were etching a lesson into the fabric of the galaxy itself. Word of what had happened spread faster than the war itself. Entire sectors whispered the woman general who declared an oath after her mate was harmed and then proceeded to make good on it by setting entire systems ablaze. Trade guilds halted shipments that crossed human space out of sheer terror. Neutral worlds scrambled to distance themselves from the Zyrex, declaring old treaties void, erasing histories of partnership, all in a desperate attempt to escape the path of human retribution. Yet what shocked the galaxy most was not the brutality of humanity's retaliation, but the unity with which it was executed. Humanity, often regarded as fragmented and quarrelsome, had responded to the harm of one of their own with singular purpose. Nations that bickered endlessly on Earth and colonies that competed fiercely for resources put aside their disputes the instant the call went out. The cry for vengeance had bound them tighter than any treaty could have managed. No vote was needed. No council debated. They move as one, like a single organism. For the galaxy, that was the most terrifying revelation. Humanity, divided, was dangerous. Humanity, united, was unstoppable. The Xyric survivors learned that lesson in the hardest way. After their homeworld was reduced to a wasteland, the humans hunted every outpost, every colony, every hidden redoubt where Xyric's forces might have been gathering strength. There were no negotiations. Every encounter was resolved with force so overwhelming that even retreat became impossible. In the aftermath, the galaxy watched entire species panic. Allies of the Xyrics, former clients and mercenary partners, dissolved their associations overnight. Many attempted to petition humanity for forgiveness, but humanity ignored them. Forgiveness was not part of their language at this stage. Fear took root everywhere. Once proud warriors, who would laugh at the notion of human frailty, now whispered warnings to their young. Do not cross them, do not test them, for they will remember, and when they remember, they do not stop. As the campaign entered its third month, human fleets carried with them not just weapons, but messages. Their signals broadcast across neutral channels declared why they had come, why they destroyed, and what price had been paid for harming one of theirs. It was not a declaration of empire. Humanity did not seek new territory, nor did they occupy the planets they burned. They left only ashes behind, and ashes spoke louder than governance. Each destroyed Xyric's world carried the same mark, a message etched into its skies with orbital fire. Hurt one human, and you will pay with everything you have. The Council convened emergency sessions, desperate to prevent further escalation. Delegates tried to summon the human general, to demand explanations, to insist on restraint. She did not appear. Humanity had stopped playing at politics the moment blood was drawn from her mate. There would be no diplomacy until the retribution was finished. The galaxy began to fracture. Some species argue that humanity must be confronted, lest they grow too powerful and reshape the balance forever. But no coalition formed. Fear splintered unity before it began. Who would dare strike first against a species that had demonstrated they could unite in an instant, wielding vengeance as both hammer and scalpel? Instead, silence prevailed. Borders that once brimmed with activity now emptied. Fleets pulled back. Worlds turned inward, fortifying themselves, praying humanity would never turn its gaze toward them. In taverns across the stars, hushed voices repeated the story of a single human oath echoing across entire sectors, and they asked themselves the same question. If they would do this for one life, what would they do if an entire world of theirs was threatened? That question lingered heavier than any fleet or bomb. For the Xyrics, there was no rebuilding. Their leadership dissolved into infighting. Remnants of fleets turned pirate out of desperation. And even their mercenary caste, the pride of their military, found themselves hunted to extinction. Humanity showed them no quarter, no second chances. In the end, the Xyric species that had once terrorized hundreds of systems became a warning etched into galactic memory. Not a rival power, not a tragic fallen empire, but a story told to frighten the ambitious. The Xyrics crossed a line, and for that, they were erased. The human general's name became myth, not as a symbol of diplomacy or conquest, but as a living embodiment of what humanity truly was when provoked. She had not fought for resources, nor for expansion. She had fought for love, and the galaxy finally understood that the human capacity for love was inseparable from their capacity for destruction. Long after the fires dimmed and the Xyrics ceased to exist, the galaxy carried scars of what had been unleashed. Merchants rerouted trade lanes to avoid even the edges of human space. Border patrols doubled their vigilance, not against human aggression, but to ensure no foolish commander under their own banner risked provoking the deathworlders. And on Earth, the humans carried on as if nothing had changed. They did not boast of their victory. They did not demand recognition. Their soldiers returned home, rebuilt, trained, and waited should the galaxy need reminding again. It was this casual silence, this indifference to power, that unsettled other species most. Humanity had demonstrated what it could do, and yet it did not hunger for conquest. That restraint was more unnerving than domination. For if they did not seek rule, then what bound them? What could the galaxy offer them to keep them calm? The answer was obvious and terrifying. Nothing. Humanity's wrath was not bought, nor negotiated, nor predicted. It was only triggered. The Zyrex no longer existed as a functioning civilization, but their absence left a vacuum in the galaxy. Their destroyed fleets, burned colonies, and eradicated leadership were not just scars. They were ruptures in the balance of power. Trade lanes once patrolled by Zyrex mercenaries now stood exposed. Worlds that had paid tribute to them were suddenly free, but vulnerable. Pirate bands formed out of desperate survivors, while opportunistic neighbors rushed to seize abandoned systems. Into this chaos, humanity remained silent. They did not stake claims to new territories, nor install themselves as governors. They did nothing but watch, and this unnerved the galaxy far more than conquest would have. For what could be feared more than a power capable of seizing everything yet choosing not to? The human general became a living legend, not only among alien nations, but within her own people. She embodied the terrifying duality of humanity, their ability to build, nurture, and protect, and their equal ability to unleash devastation. Soldiers spoke her name with reverence, knowing she had carried out the vengeance they all would have demanded. Civilians looked at her as a reminder that they were never alone, that their species would always rise as one when a line was crossed. To outsiders, this loyalty bordered on fanaticism, but to humans, it was simple truth. They did not worship their leaders. They trusted them when they had proven themselves in blood and fire, and she had proven it beyond dispute. The Galactic Council grew restless. Their constant deliberations failed to yield answers. How should they treat humanity now? Some argued for immediate alliance, bending treaties in their favor, so as to remain safe from reprisal. Others whispered that an alliance would make them servants to a species that could turn on them at any perceived slight. A few reckless voices suggested building a coalition to contain them, but those voices faded quickly when confronted with reality. If the Zyrex, with their military traditions stretching across centuries, could be erased in months, what hope could a coalition possibly hold? Even if they combined fleets, even if they gathered armies, the question hung in the air. Who among them would be willing to draw human blood first? Silence always followed. Over time, the Zyrex homeworld itself became a symbol. The planet remained shattered, with its atmosphere poisoned and its cities reduced to skeletal ruins. No one dared settle it. No one dared terraform or scavenge it. The humans had marked it forever, and the mark was sacred in its own dark way. Passing ships gave it wide berth, as though the ashes themselves might remember. Rumors spread that human warships still patrolled its orbit, though sightings were rare. Some captains swore they saw black silhouettes drifting among the wreckage, silent and watchful. Whether true or not, the effect was undeniable. Fear alone had turned the planet into a forbidden zone, a monument to human vengeance carved into the stars. Generations of aliens grew up with the story. It was told as a warning in academies, whispered in military camps, even woven into cultural myths. Children were told never to harm a human, for doing so would bring firestorms that no shield could withstand. Entire philosophies emerged around this tale. Some species argued that humanity's restraint, destroying only those who cross a line, proved they were not tyrants but guardians of their own. Others countered that guardianship could turn to tyranny without warning, that a power capable of annihilation on principle was not to be trusted. Yet no matter the interpretation, none were willing to test the truth again. The general herself did not seek power beyond her command. She returned to her mate, lived quietly, and oversaw the defense of her people. Yet her influence spread further than any throne could carry. Delegates who visited human space often requested audiences with her. Though she denied them all, the humans had no interest in foreign approval. Their silence was the loudest weapon they carried. If they had spoken, perhaps the galaxy could have negotiated, pleaded, or reasoned. But silence left everyone in fear of assumptions. What would awaken their wrath again? No one knew. And so the galaxy tiptoed around them, adjusting its policies and strategies to avoid ever finding out. But humanity was not blind. They watched how other powers shifted, how new coalitions hesitated to form, how fear guided decisions. Some humans debated whether it was time to expand, to seize what had been left behind. Others insisted restraint must remain their weapon, for though vengeance had elevated them to myth, conquest would make them like every empire before. The general sided with restraint. Her vengeance had been precise, absolute, and personal. She had not waged war to gain, but to punish. To turn vengeance into empire would be to betray the very reason they had fought. Her words carried weight, and humanity listened. And so, instead of stretching their reach, they hardened their defenses, strengthened their fleets, and built alliances of necessity among themselves. It was a paradox, a species feared by all, yet disinterested in ruling any. The galaxy did not understand this. For millennia, species had risen and fallen, each clawing for dominance, each building on conquest. To them, power was only ever used in one direction, outward. But humanity's power was like a blade drawn only in defense, and when drawn, it cut deeper than any empire's ambition. That restraint made them unpredictable. Empires could be bargained with, manipulated, or resisted. Humanity could not. Their motives lay not in politics or profit, but in something deeper, something alien to the rest of the galaxy. Love, loyalty, the bonds of one life to another. They had gone to war for a mate, for one person, and in that simple truth lay the greatest fear. Because if one life could bring fire to worlds, what would an entire species avenged look like? No one dared to imagine. Decades turned into centuries, and the Zyres became nothing but a story. Their ruins stood silent, their name invoked only as a curse or a warning. Humanity endured, advancing steadily, their colonies thriving, their fleets stronger than ever. But they never forgot either. Memorials stood on Earth and its colonies, not to celebrate conquest, but to honor what had been endured and answered. In human eyes, the war was not glory, it was justice. And that perspective baffled others. Species accustomed to recording victories as triumphs of empire found it unsettling that humanity spoke of vengeance with sorrow, not pride. But that sorrow was its own kind of weapon. It revealed that humanity had no hunger for war, no thirst for expansion. When they struck, it was because a line had been crossed, and the galaxy now lived in terror of ever crossing again.